So then Iran has announced it's closing the Strait of Hormuz again, less than 24 hours after declaring the waterway open. It says the United States must lift its blockade of Iranian ports before marine traffic can flow freely. The tension has placed a chokehold on the global economy, heavily restricting the movement of energy supplies worldwide. Iran says from now on only vessels with Revolutionary Guard approval will be allowed through the strait. On Friday, US President Donald Trump insisted the US blockade on Iranian ships and ports would remain in place until a peace deal was reached. Iran's new restrictions come after a convoy of tankers was seen leaving the Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. It was the first major movement in the waterway in 7 weeks. We're live this hour with Malik Trainer in Kuwait, and Hayder Saadi is standing by for us in the Iranian capital, Tehran, and that's where we're starting. So Tehran putting out a statement now saying that the strait has reverted to its previous state. What does that mean exactly?
It's obviously, first and foremost, meaning that we're dealing with a very fragile and intricate situation. There are different actors at work, which paves the way for a potentiality of diplomatic engagement down the road. But still, we hear this very important statement from the joint military headquarters of Khatam al-Anbiya. They came out to say that the Islamic Republic of Iran, following previous agreements made in the negotiations conducted in good faith, has agreed to the managed passage of a limited number of oil and commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Unfortunately, the Americans, with their repeated breaches of trust that are part of their history, continue their acts of piracy and maritime theft under the pretext of so-called blockade. For this reason, control over the Strait of Hormuz has reverted to its previous state, and this strategic waterway is under strict management and control by our forces. It is stated that as long as the United States does not end the complete freedom of movement for vessels from Iran to their destinations, and back, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz will remain under strict control and will remain as it was before. This is a very strong message we heard from the headquarters of Khatam al-Anbiya. Very much similar, we hear other statements actually from the naval forces of the IRGC, all indicative of this mixed message. Iran previously talked about the opening of the Strait of Hormuz to the commercial ships, and they said that it's going to remain open for the remaining days of the ceasefire. Basically, we're talking about around 4 days. Also, they said that Iran is going to continue to impose control and authority over the Strait of Hormuz. They are meanwhile talking about a plan to impose transit charges or fees on the ships that can go through the trajectory. They are also saying that any passage through this strategically significant choke point should be coordinated with the Iranian side, and the passage should go within the ship pathway that was announced previously by IRGC, very much close to the Iranian coast, and that is obviously indicative of the leverage that Iran is trying to use, not only as a pressure point, but also when it comes to the economic pressure and when it comes to the regional security context.
And so before the closing of the strait, Donald Trump was being very optimistic, wasn't he? He was saying there could be negotiations over the weekend. What do these latest developments mean as far as the deal's concerned, do you think? We've lost our connection there with Hayder Saadi there in Tehran, so let's just move on. Okay, before the Revolutionary Guard made that announcement, a convoy of tankers was seen leaving the Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. They're marked in red on this time lapse, which is from the tracking site marinetraffic.com. It is the first major movement of ships in the waterway in 7 weeks. So let's bring in Malik Trainer, who joins us from Kuwait City. So Malik, we've seen some traffic moving in the Strait. It's not a lot, but some ships have been passing through.
Yeah, exactly. Not a lot. I mean, when we talk about the Hormuz Strait, I think when the fact that even 10, we know about 10.
Trying to sabotage the path of the diplomatic efforts through this diplomatic circus that they are adopting. They thought that the force and the pressure and the escalation is part of the solution. No, these cannot be for the benefit of anyone. Diplomacy must prevail. One by one, please. One by one. President Trump said that if there is no agreement on Wednesday, there will be a return to the military action. Then let President Trump talk. He talks too much. He said contradictory things within the same statement. This cannot be prevailed. I don't know what exactly he meant. The American people must decide about him if his statements are right and if they are going with international law, then we will continue our defense with all heroism, with all nationalism and patriotism. We will defend Iran, the oldest civilization on the planet. We will fight till the last Iranian soldier. War cannot lead to any positive solution. The Americans must understand and must learn the lesson. The era of colonialism must come to an end. They cannot dictate the orders on the other nations. And if everyone concentrates on peace and stability, this will be for the benefit of everyone, and this will be a chance. But if they chose to try to be the aggressors and to go back to the war, they will see the answers from Iran. We will never hesitate in responding with all force. The question is not clear regarding the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Let me say that it is within our territorial waters, and whatsoever the Americans say, whatsoever the place they are trying to go through, I will say that the blockade will never be valid. And let me tell you, there will never be any blockade in the future. No one can dictate their desires on us, the Iranians. What about the support of Azerbaijan? We appreciate all the efforts of all our friends, including Azerbaijan and Turkey and other countries. All these countries have good relations with Iran, and the presidents of both countries have phone calls since the very start of the war. We appreciate every decency from the countries of the region, but this aggression was not legal at all, and the Iranian defense is legal according to the international law. The last question, please. What is your expectation regarding the Pakistani mediation? We concentrate on putting and developing a memorandum of understanding, a new framework, and we will never go into talks and negotiations that will lead to failure, and we will never accept to be facing another round of aggression. We have entered talks and negotiations with all goodwill. In January, we were in the middle of these talks, but the attractors, and they have violated the rules of diplomacy. We need to be fully aware regarding the goodwill of every party, particularly the Americans, because of their previous aggressions. We reached that point now. This war is a defense from us and aggression from the other side. And we have seen them assassinating Ayatollah al-Khamenei, the leader of Iran, in his office. They have killed our commanders. It's not in the front line.
Some of them with their neighbors. So this was a war crime, and during the war, in the first minutes of the aggression, they also attacked and bombed an elementary school and they slaughtered 168 small kids at the age of 7 to 11 years old. All the media, you have to reflect the ugly picture of this aggression, and you have to be careful not justifying the ill political agenda of those who started this aggression. The Israeli regime wanted to have the greater Israel and to change the geopolitics of the region. So this defense that Iran is doing is on behalf of the whole region, is on behalf of all the free countries, and we don't have any option just to win this resistance, which we are very much determined to do that.
Minister, is there a precise date for the next round of talks with the Americans?
Until we agree on the framework, we cannot set the date. As soon as we agree, there was significant actually progress made, but then this maximalist approach by the other side, trying to make Iran an exception in international law, prevented us to reach an agreement. I have to be very crystal clear that Iran would not accept to be an exception from the international law. Anything that we are going to be commit, we are going to commit within these international regulations.
Thank you so much.
خیلی خوب و تشکر میکنیم از روابط بسیار خوب دو کشور از مردم.
It was good, and we want to thank the people of Azerbaijan, President of Azerbaijan, who showed that in difficult times we can rely on them. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I was very clear that whatever we accept will be within the international regulation and international law. No government in Iran can commit the country beyond the international law. I told, and I will repeat it again, Iran would not accept to be an exception from the international law. We are member of Non-Proliferation Treaty. We are member of IAEA, and we are going to commit. We do have responsibilities and we do have rights. Iran is entitled to the rights, and we are not going to abandon our rights. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was Saeed Khatibzadeh, Iranian deputy foreign minister, saying that he cannot set a date for talks with the United States until we agree to the framework for those talks. He said war cannot lead to any positive solution, and that we will never hesitate to respond with force. Let's head back to Tawhid Saadi, who's in Tehran. So Tawhid, the Iranian deputy foreign minister, putting on a defiant front there.
Yes, indeed. The Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh started with a criticism over the contradictory statements that are coming from the Americans, and in particular from the U.S. President Donald Trump. Very much similar to the statement that we heard from Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Parliament and the head of Iranian negotiating delegation, is saying that Trump's statements are based on false allegations, quote-unquote lies, according to the Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Parliament. Also, in the recent speech by the Deputy Foreign Minister Khatibzadeh, we hear the sort of two-sided, twofold statement from the Iranian side, readiness for another round of confrontation while readiness for diplomatic engagement. And he also tried to depict a picture of the obstacles in that regard. Also, he said that negotiations under dictation is not possible. He talked about another key issue, the Strait of Hormuz, the situation there, and the impact of the American blockade over the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. He says that the Strait of Hormuz, from the Iranian perspective, is intended to remain open, but quote-unquote, he said, we announced the facilitation of navigation through Hormuz, but the American side is trying to undermine the diplomatic process. And it goes without saying in that regard that Strait of Hormuz remains as one of the key issues when it comes to the sticking points regarding the trajectory of diplomatic engagement. Also, we heard from the Deputy Foreign Minister a sense of appreciation to the neighboring country, and he said that the war that we experienced was an act of defense for us and an act of aggression for the other side. And at the end of the day, as you mentioned, no agreement on the final date of a next expected potential negotiation down the road between Tehran and Washington.
All right, Tawhid, thanks for that. Tawhid Sadi there in Tehran. Let's head now to Antalya in southern Turkey. Resul Serda joins us from there. So, Resul, in fact, the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister was speaking from that diplomacy forum that you are attending, and where the focus has very much been on the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz and the US-Israeli war on Iran.
Indeed, so we're seeing a divergence of the positions here, while the United States is insisting that Iran has agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without any conditions. However, that the American blockade is going to remain in place. So that is now once again confirmed by the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Khatibzadeh, who is currently in Antalya, was just speaking in a panel, saying that that is not true. This is not the term that we have agreed on. They're saying that the strait is open, the Strait of Hormuz is open, but still the regulations, and still it is the vessels needs to go through the designated areas with the full coordination of the Iranian armed forces. So we're clearly seeing that either there is a misunderstanding between the two parties, or there is a divergence of the positions here. So he is saying that what announced by the President of the United States, Trump, he's talking a lot, but he is contradicting himself in the same statement. So it's simply about the lack of talking about the lack of the consistencies in the statements that are being released by President of the United States, Donald Trump. However, having said that, so he's still saying that so the war is not solution, and we need to come to the negotiating table, that Iran is serious and determined to solve this issue at the negotiating table. However, he has been warning the USA and Israel, saying that if there will be a return to the conflict, so Iran's response is not going to be limited. It's going to be a full force response here. So what we are seeing is regarding the Strait of Hormuz, so the positions are still far away from each other. And it is, as of now, the main concern with the other politicians also today saying, well, it will be difficult to bridge that gap. However, the positive sign, also according to the Iranian delegation here,